Welcome to the ICMEC podcast. I am Pilar Ramírez, Vice President of National Capacity Building at the International Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and I will be your host in a series of episodes when we are going to talk with heroes who work behind our mission: prevent, protect, and investigate the crime of online child sexual abuse and exploitation and missing children. We are going to learn together about why they do this job and why we need to work together for combat this kind of crimes. In this first episode, we are going to talk with Guillermo Galarza, our Vice President of Partnerships and Law Enforcement Training, who joined ICMEC 20 years ago. He will explain a little bit about that, what ICMEC starts, what is the mission of ICMEC, and why we need to continue working together for strengthening capabilities for combat online child sexual abuse and exploitation around the world. For this first episode, for me, it's a pleasure to talk with someone that is special for the organization, our colleague and friend, Guillermo Galarza, who will tell us a little bit about the history of ICMEC. Guillermo, it's a pleasure to talk to you today, and the proposal of this is like that you can share with all of the people that is joining for the first time ICMEC about why ICMEC is so important for you, for all the people that is behind the mission of ICMEC. But let's talk a little bit about that time when you started an ICMEC and someone realized that needed to change the reality for the children around the world, and someone decided we need to create ICMEC. Can you explain us a little bit the context in the past when ICMEC started, and what is the challenge that permit at that moment to decide the creation of ICMEC?
Well, thank you so much, Pilar, and it is a pleasure to be here on this podcast. Very excited to talk about this very important issue. I gotta tell you, I gotta be honest, thinking about child protection, there is just so many organizations out there, so many great organizations doing amazing work. But I gotta tell you, the landscape has really changed over the past 20, 25 years. When I started my career really not knowing what I wanted, just like all of us. And I started at our sister organization, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, NECMEC. NECMEC is an organization in the United States that addresses missing and child sexual exploitation. At the time, I started at the hotline. They needed someone that spoke Spanish, and really, I was the only one that spoke Spanish at the organization. And thinking that I was just going to do this for about 6 months, I quickly realized that the impact that I had, even in the Spanish community, really changed the way I looked at what I wanted to do with my life. Moving a couple of years, this was back in 1996. In about 1999, we started seeing a global pandemic when it came to child sexual exploitation. Really, the growth of the internet was really penetrating a lot of the countries, and so did the perpetrators. Perpetrators would go to the parks, would utilize the traditional mail to exchange the worst of the worst videos and images of child sexual exploitation. When the internet started growing, we really saw an impact, globally, and the National Center started receiving a lot of dignitaries that would come to the National Center and would want to create their own National Center in their respective country. At the time, NECMEC did not have the bandwidth to really assist countries, guiding them from point A to point Z on how to create a national center. So as a result, and again, this is various visits. We had the Prime Minister of Belgium, we had the President of Costa Rica, different heads of state. Our board of directors at the time from NECMEC decided to create an international branch called ICMEC, the International Center for Missing Children, to really work with countries to create their own national centers, to develop trainings, and really to develop what we call today national capacity. I can get to it in a little bit. And as a result of that, ICMEC was created in 1999. We were really three of us were working. It was just the CEO, and it was another worker working on missing children. I was working on the trainings. This is something that we really quickly realized that we needed we needed to train law enforcement globally on how to address online child sexual exploitation. Because again, with the rise of the internet, technologies, we were all really learning, and there were a lot of cases, global operations that law enforcement did not know how to operate these type of cases. So that was really our niche as we became a bigger organization. This is where we are today.
But when we talk about the history of ICMEC, all the people that is an ICMEC and outside the ICMEC really think about you, because you know everything about the beginning of ICMEC until now. But thinking about you, you start more than 20 years in the organization, but why you continue defending this cause? Why you decide to continue supporting this this issue, like combat online child sexual abuse and exploitation, the issue of missing children? Why you decide that to dedicate your professional life?
You know what, Pilar? Because I think it's in this type of work, I've always said this. It's all about the people and the impact that we're making globally. I think for me was really when we think about even online child sexual exploitations, there are hundreds and thousands of images, and I always want to think, never lose the fact that every time that we can do a training, or that we can change a legislation, or we can create awareness and education, maybe one child is going to be recovered, maybe one parent is going to have a closure because their child has been identified or recovered. And I think that kind of impact, that's something that doesn't go every day, and that's what really I wanted to stay in the organization, because of the impact, and also because the way I've seen the organization, where we started with 3 people, now we are 30, 40 people. Just, we have a national capacity building team with folks in different parts of the world. I never thought that we would get to that stage, but really it's just the impact that we're doing collectively. Because if we can make a little change, that's something positive. We're not going to move rocks, we're not going to move worlds, but if we can change something by creating awareness, education, prevention, I think that's the most impactful reward that someone can get.
But for all these years, I know that you have seen a lot of things, not only that happened in ICMEC, but around the world, but specifically about ICMEC. Do you remind some specifically moment, situation, or case, or campaign that you can share with us and say, like, okay, that's represent what ICMEC is?
Yes. Actually, I have 2 things. The very first one, I can tell you that there was a time when we were doing a training in Bulgaria. And I think it was about our, I don't know, 15th training. Now, keep in mind, now we're over 300 trainings. And at that time, I was sitting with the head of the police, and she was commenting on how great the training was. But she asked me one favor, and she said, Guillermo, it would be great if we can get prosecutors in the same room. We've done all these trainings, we've done all these capacity building trainings, but to get prosecutors in the same room, it's uneventful. And really at the time it clicked a switch, because we realized that it was an issue that we needed to not only train police officers and investigators, but we needed to develop a multi-sectoral training approach. Not just police officers, but bringing the prosecutors, bringing NGOs, and bringing other stakeholders, because we know this issue is not just a law enforcement issue. As we always say, law enforcement cannot arrest their way out of it, but it has to be a multi-sectoral approach to developing capacity building trainings. So that was one of the moments in time that we realized that we needed, because of the ICMEC, we were able to enhance our training programs globally, to bring in prosecutors, to make sure that law enforcement, police officers, and prosecutors are in the same room, exchanging best practices, but also addressing any issues or challenges that they may have. Otherwise, they will never get together in the same room. That's pretty much it. And the other training that I can tell you, we were at a training providing technology tools, sort of the latest technology tools. And I remember looking at some of the officers, and you could see their eyes lighten up, because because something that we were able to provide, they were able to identify an offender in pretty much in the next hotel. Because again, we were providing technology tools that they were able to apply so they can investigate their cases. And those are sort of the fundamental hopes that you want to be able to provide either to parents or the professionals in the line so they can investigate their cases and again identify victims that otherwise they would never be identified.
For example, I know that in your work you need to lead with a lot of people around the world, specifically for different cultures with different ideas. So, can you tell us a little bit about that? How was the day that you needed to be in front of these different cultures and try to bring all together in the same room for find the same objective? Combat online child sexual abuse and exploitation, and focusing specifically in the children.
Thank you, Billy. I think one of the things, I always say, we're all human. And I think the important thing and the important point here is to really break those cultural barriers. I have found out that the best way to break a cultural barrier is to talk about food or music. And that is the best way to sort of engage in a fruitful conversation with someone. In this line of work, we get to focus on the bad things, on the challenges, on the issues, where there's no legislation, where there's no technology, where there's no resources. It's important to also put another spin to it, focusing on what we have. What we have is we have health, is we have limited resources, but we really have that network of individuals globally that are facing the same challenges and same issues. Back in 1996, the United States was really, and some of the other countries, first world countries, they were in the same sort of steps that many countries today are facing, 20 years behind us. So, and I think by learning and exchanging best practices and understanding that we're all on the same page here, we all want to do the right thing, and that is to protect children, save victims, and work with parents. I think we all understand those issues. The hard part again is just getting over the cultural hurdles. But I think, as I said, we're all people, and I think we all have a heart, and at some point, we want to do the right thing in this space.
But the thing change, as you know, every year. And I remind that the challenge that we have 10 years ago is not the same, or 20 years ago, when you start more than 20 years, is not the same that we have right now. We are now leading with artificial intelligence, with a lot of things that is more than the things that we believe in the past that we needed to lead. And that is the big challenge that we are having with our partners. So, but what do you think about that? How ICMEC, specifically ICMEC, had to adapt for this change?
Think about something that you said right now, and you said it 3 times. I always hear when I go to conferences, people repeat this word, and we get stuck with the word challenge. We get stuck with that word. And I want to say that because rather than focusing on sort of the challenge, use that spin and think about opportunities. Because I think every time we talk about a challenge, there's another set of opportunities that we come up. Yes, technology is one of the biggest opportunities that we face because it's presenting. I don't like to say the word challenge again, but it presents another hurdle for us because we know that law enforcement is not equipped with the latest technologies. So it presents an opportunity for us to engage with companies, to engage with law enforcement, to see what else we can offer them as well. Look at legislation. 20 years ago, legislation wasn't really there. We came up with a global report, and out of 196 countries, only 5 countries at the time met the full criteria. The challenge, of course, was that many countries did not have the legislation whatsoever, but also the opportunity for us was to really engage. We saw an opening because we could work with countries to ensure that policymakers are aware of the issues. We we opened an area that we were able to develop policy roundtables. It gave us an upper hand because we knew that there was a gap in policies and legislations that we needed to address right away. So that has changed significantly. Now, many countries do have legislation, but again, what happens is that legislation is not keeping up with technology. You just mentioned AI and all these new technologies, of course. But as we continue to progress, legislation is going to be forever growing. And this is where we have to make sure that legislation, policies, and technology are sort of hand to hand as well. But again, this creates an opportunity for ICMEC to engage with other policymakers, other governments, to ensure that we raise awareness, education, and highlight these specific issues.
I think that for all these years, you have the opportunity to lead with all these partners and obviously to understand the reality for this issue, and to see like the darkness in this crime, that the people is not all the time good people, that exist criminals that are using the amazing tools like the internet for doing something wrong against the children. But you are working in this topic for a long time, and I think that it's important to understand where you continue seeing a hope in this work and why you continue doing this.
So Billy, it's really an uphill battle, right? I mean, I think the way we have to take a look at this, we have to take a small bites at the elephant, because the elephant is really technologies and child sex offenders. Uh, on another side, I think why do I continue to do this? Because of the people, because we are seeing changes, small changes, but we're seeing changes. We are seeing countries that are enhancing their grooming legislation, for example. We are seeing countries that are developing a regional approach rather than a country specific approach. We have realized that countries, this is not a competition. It is really an opportunity for countries to work together to really protect the most vulnerable. So to see that in the past 20 years is remarkable. Suppose 20 years ago, countries did not want to air their dirty laundry. They didn't want to talk about their issues. But now just to see in in regional forums, in global forums where countries are talking about the hurdles that they're seeing and sharing those, I think that's a very positive step to moving forward to combating online child sexual exploitation. And that's the way I continue to stay here, Pilar, because I think there's a great opportunity for ICMEC to be at the center of these global policy discussions.
And what do you think, what do you see ICMEC in the future?
Where do I see ICMEC in the future? I think ICMEC has a potential of expanding its wings all over the world. Right now, we have representative in, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe 13 countries, 14 countries. But as we continue to enhance our footprint, again, our footprint is capacity building, and that is trainings, that is roundtables, that is policy discussions, all that sort of area that we call capacity building. I think we will be expanding in other parts of the world. In addition to that, working with our partners, we could never do our work without the support of our corporate partners. Companies have a huge stake in addressing these issues because it's the moral thing to do, it's the right thing to do, corporate social responsibility, and what a better way to work with a global NGO to really promote the right thing, and that is to address child protection.
Thank you so much, Guillermo. Like all the team appreciate a lot your knowledges and your expertise and the history that you have in ICMEC. So it's a pleasure for me to talk to you, for the people understand a little bit about your background in the organization and know more about the International Center for Missing and Exploited Children.
Thank you so much, Billy. And I would highlight that if you're watching this video, simply go into our website. We have so many resources. We have agents of change. We have prevention and education. We have our gap assessments or multidisciplinary or multi-sectoral response and capacity assessment that you can get a better understanding of what are some of the gaps and issues in your specific country. And again, do what's right, because if you don't do what's right, the children are going to be out there and they're the most vulnerable. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us in this first episode. And please join us for the next one when we are going to talk with another professionals who will improve our knowledge about the issue of online child sexual abuse and exploitation and missing children. Please, if you have more interest in learn about how we can to work together, join us and visit our website, icmec.org.